everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be diving in to the new palette that was just launched from Huda Beauty. I could not wait to get my hands on this. This is called the Empowered Palette, and this just launched on the Sephora website, which is where I picked it up. This palette retails for $67. It has a lot going on in the palette. And in this video, I'm going to create 2 eyeshadow looks using it. I'm going to be sharing a ton of swatches and comparisons of this palette next to a bunch of other palettes in my collection, just so you guys can get an idea for the color story. So this will be my first initial review of the palette, but because there are so many shades in here, I will be doing another video with 4 eyeshadow looks using the palette. Today, I'm just kind of running out of time, which is okay because I'm excited to play with it. It is a palette that includes 18 gold, coppers, and neutrals in matte, metallic, shimmer, and gel liner hybrid textures. Lots of different textures in this palette. This ultimate everyday palette is great for subtle to standout looks. The palette contains 2 ultra pigmented hybrid eyeshadow gel creams, 2 mesmerizing shimmer metallics, 2 innovative wet metallics, 2 soft shine metallic pearl shadows, and 9 pigmented velvety soft mattes. The term empowered encourages having the knowledge, confidence, means, or ability to do things or make decisions for oneself, which I love that. So these 2 shades right here on the end, they're creamy. It's like a gel formula. It's really an interesting texture, and I'm really excited to play with it more. And then this shade right here is very interesting. I have it on this side, and it is another kind of creamy, shimmery shadow. It's kind of that gel hybrid. So this palette has a lot going on, and I'm so excited to play with it. Let's go ahead and jump into the 2 tutorials. Then we will get into the swatches and comparisons. And in the swatches, I will be sharing images with and without a flash, just so you guys can see the undertones. A flash really helps to provide an insight to an undertone of shadows. So I will be sharing 2 images of the same so that you can see it with a flash and without. And then once we get through that, I will jump into my final thoughts. So let's get into the tutorials, and I will see you guys all in my final thoughts. Let's go ahead and jump into the eyeshadow looks using the new Huda Beauty palette. So this palette is very beautiful, and it has some really gorgeous dark tones in here. Kind of here for this palette. I'm so excited. So this manifested looks like this. It's kind of like a creamy, oh, look at that. And it's not super emollient. So it's creamy, but it's not emollient at all. Like you can't really see it's got a lot of shine to it. What in the world? I'm so excited to play with this palette. So I'm going to go into this shade right here, Best Self. It's like a kind of a real pretty peachy color. And I'm going to bring that right there in the crease. That shade is beautiful, and it has so much pigment. So even though it looks lighter in the pan, it's a great shade. And I think it might be lighter just because it's against, you know, the palette itself is darker, and then it's next to a bunch of darker shadows. Let's go into Get It. This is another kind of really pretty peachy color. And I'm just going to kind of deepen my crease up with that. Oh, those 2 shades are gorgeous together. Look at that. So pretty. I'm going to go into Keep Going, that really pretty matte shade on the top. Kind of deepen it up here on the outer corner. And I'll just take a soft blending brush and kind of blend all those shades together. And I really want to try this Manifest It shade, this one right here. It's so unique because it's so creamy. I want to see what it's going to look like applied. That shade is best applied with a finger. So for those of you that have nails like I do, kind of keep that in mind. This one is really pretty, but it's so creamy. It's like the brush has a hard time picking it up. So I'm going to kind of pull that shadow as far as I can get it to pull. because it kind of bunched up right there on the front and it's a little bit too foily. See what I'm talking about right there? And it's emphasizing all my wrinkles, right? Because it is kind of a creamy shadow. So I'm trying to get it to blend out. It's a little better, but that one definitely kind of emphasizes the wrinkles on the eyelid. It's almost like it emphasizes the folds. Do you see that? Like the folds in my eye? I don't know. It's a pretty shade and it's unique to have something like that in there, but it does kind of emphasize. So just kind of keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to go into the shade Keep It Going, and I'm going to bring that here on this outer corner. I'm going to take my flat brush. I'm going to go into Worthy, this cream shade right here, and I'm going to focus that like right there on the outer corner, kind of, and then blend it out. Okay, so I went ahead and threw on some concealer. Let's go on to the lower lash line. I am going to go into Get It, and I'm going to kind of smoke that in. It's super pigmented, you guys. Look at that. Like so much pigment. I'm going to take a fluffier brush and I'm going to go into Keep Going. Kind of blend that into it. And then I'm going to go into Worthy. I'm going to go into the shade Confident with the lightest hand and tap that into this outer corner just to give me a little bit more depth. Okay, so this is the final look and this is really pretty. It's kind of soft, kind of warm, kind of fall. That cream shade I'm curious about. I'm going to be wearing this eyeshadow look pretty much for the rest of the day. So I will let you guys know how this wears when I'm editing this, because I'm kind of wondering, it kind of feels like it's going to get a little crusty, like right here in this area, but I don't know. I'll let you guys know though, but I think it's really pretty. So that's it for this look. Let's go ahead and jump into the next look. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the next look. So I am going to go into this shade right here. It's a really pretty kind of purpley gray color. And I'm curious to see how this is going to look in the crease on its own. It's a really pretty purpley cool tone. So it's not too purpley and it's not too gray. It's kind of a good like in-between shade. Now I'm gonna go into Confident and I'm gonna bring that right there on the brow bone, like right there. And then kind of blend those two together. This is my hard eye. I've talked about this before in other videos, but I have the hardest time doing eyeshadow on this eye, and it's because I hold the brushes across my face. Over here, I can do it like this, but crossing over, I don't know. Am I the only one that struggles with that? Because I struggle with it. It just is what it is. I'm going to take my Smith 253. I'm going to go into the shade Visionary, and I'm going to apply it with a brush and just see what this shade looks like. Yeah, I think that shade is probably best applied with a finger. It's kind of a duochrome in a way because it has like these, it kind of has some purpley, like as you turn your finger, it's like a purpley kind of rose goldy kind of color. It's really pretty, but I'm thinking I might do a halo. So I'm going to go into Big Dreams. Kind of sweep that in the inner corner and also here on the outer corner. I'm gonna go back into Visionary again, kind of bring that back to life here. Yeah, so another thing is that shade is not super shiny. It's not super sparkly. So kind of keep that in mind. It's not a bad shade. It's just not like super special, I guess. I'm thinking about going into Courageous, which is a really pretty kind of purpley color. And I'm gonna place that like right there on the center. But it's so deceiving because it's not, it's dark. Okay, now I'm really messing this whole thing up. It's so much darker than it looks in the pan. It looks in the pan like it's this bright purple, like this bright sparkly purple. And then when you put your brush into it, it goes dark. And then you're like, wait, it's not, it's deceiving. So I think I'm just going to go into bold moves and kind of try to salvage this whole situation I got going on. I wanted something to pop here on the center of the lid, and my eyes are really, really red because I drove home from Vegas yesterday, and I'm completely exhausted at the end of the day. We had a fun weekend, but I'm exhausted. So I'm going to go into Big Dreams, and I'm going to sweep that right here on the lower lash line. And then I'm going to go into Rebel, which is a really beautiful pink. I'm really glad that she included that shade in this palette. So I'm going to go into Confident and bring that here on the outer corner and also right up here on this lash line. And then just kind of blend everything together. Okay, so I am back. This is the final look, and even though I did struggle a little bit with that look, it did turn out okay. It turned out really pretty. I am excited to play with this palette more, so I'm gonna leave the tutorials here for this video, but I definitely will do another video with 4 more eyeshadow looks just to really play around with it. So that's it for the try-on portion of video. Let's go ahead and jump into the swatches, and I'm gonna swatch this palette next to a bunch of other palettes that I have. I will also share those images with and without a flash because a flash does really help to provide an insight to the undertones of the shades. And then once we get through the comparisons, I will go ahead and jump into my final thoughts. So I will see you guys then. right, so I hope that those swatches and comparisons were helpful. Let me go ahead and get into my final thoughts. First up, I really like this palette. I'm excited to continue to play around with it and kind of play around with the textures in here. This palette has a lot going on. As I was going through my palettes, I really don't have anything in my collection that's like this when it comes to having a mixture of warm tones and cool tones. It's a really beautiful palette. Overall, happy with it. It's swatched like a dream. Like this palette, the mattes feel super buttery and super creamy. Here's the thing that I love about this palette. Number one, it has a lot of depth. It also has a few lighter tones. So it works for a wide variety of complexions, from light to dark deep. So this palette offers a lot. With all of that said, my one complaint is that I don't feel like we need both of these gold shades, right here. They're similar and they're almost identical, just not necessary in this palette. The only difference is one shade is more of a yellow gold and the other is a little more on the bronzy side, but they're similar. So the only time you can tell a difference, like if I take my hand away from the light, you can see this one's a little bit more bronzy, this one's more yellow, but they're so similar. They're a little bit too similar for this palette, but I really loved the Rose Quartz palette, still do. It's such a gorgeous palette with so much to offer. So this one I feel like is kind of similar to that. The only palette that I found that was kind of similar to this palette is the Nabla Side by Side Nudes palette, which is one of my all-time favorites. So if you guys have that palette, you may not need this one from Huda. I would say the differences between the Natasha Denona palette, I would say the Empowered from Huda Beauty is a little bit more everyday use than this one from Natasha Denona, but they're both really great palettes. I think you have to decide which color story you think you would use more, but I like them both. I think they're both really pretty palettes and I'm excited to continue to play around with this. Be on the look for my video coming up with 4 eyeshadow looks using the palette. But other than that, I think it's a great palette. So that's it for my video. Sound off down below. How many of you guys have picked up this Empowered palette from Huda Beauty? And what has been your experience? I'm so curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and I will see you guys all in my next video. Love you. Bye.